This is your Sound Off Extra WWE Fast Lane 2019 review here on the Solomonster Sounds Off YouTube channel. Fast Lane from Cleveland, Ohio. A thumbs up show overall. Fun main event. What turned into a really good WWE title match there by the end. A really good Raw Tag Team title match. An excellent Fatal 4-Way for the United States Championship. And even the opener with Miz and Shane McMahon against the Usos, I thought was a fun match, especially with the crowd hot as they were for the Miz, it being his hometown and all. That makes a thumbs up show. Way more good than bad. But the bad was there, and it's weird because of all things, the match between Charlotte and Becky Lynch, which I thought should have headlined the show. Of course, seeing what they did here, I could see why it didn't. Thank God it didn't headline the show. But this has been the dominant storyline now for months in this company. That is the match that likely is headlining WrestleMania this year. And the match between Charlotte and Becky tonight was a giant waste of time. It was terrible. The women's tag team title match, that wasn't very good either. And the Smackdown women's title match wasn't very good either. Asuka did the best she could. Mandi Rose tried. She's getting better. The match just wasn't that great. All of the women's stuff pretty much disappointed here on the show tonight. Everything else, though, for the most part, not all of it, but most of it, I thought, was pretty good. Let's start with the kickoff show. EC3 spoke his first words like a newborn baby. He tried to hit on Mandi backstage. I can't say I blame him. Sonya Deville, though, she didn't like this very much. She promptly buried him, just when you thought he couldn't be buried any more than he already has been. She called him lame, told him to get lost. This is the story of his main roster run so far. But at least now he's talking. That's progress. He can actually speak. Elsewhere, we had Samoa Joe. He agreed to defend his United States title in a Fatal 4-Way match against R-Truth, Rey Mysterio, and Andrade Cien Almas, which meant that Rey and Andrade made it onto the main card after all, which is thumbs up. We had New Day in the back when Kofi Kingston was informed that the McMahons wanted to see him about tonight's WWE Championship match. He got all excited, thinking that it meant that he was going to be added to the match. Big E and Xavier, they came out for their kickoff match against Rusev and Shinsegae Nakamura. This, I believe, is this the second pay-per-view? Or did Nakamura have a match at the Elimination Chamber? I don't remember. I know Nakamura had a kickoff show match at the Royal Rumble and then came back out for the Rumble match. He's had quite a bit of kickoff duty of late, it seems, Nakamura. Here's a guy who won the Royal Rumble last year, challenged for the WWE Championship, and it's kind of amazing to see how far he has slid down the card since then. But we had Rusev here in this match annihilating Big E with a Machka kick, had the match won. Xavier breaks up the fall. Woods goes for a cannonball dive out onto the heels, but they caught him, dumped him down on the floor. And Rusev had the accolade locked on Woods. He got out of it. Rusev missed this charge in the corner and gave New Day the chance to hit the up, up, down, down for the win. So Big E and Xavier pick up the W here. Good match. I thought this was a good match. And that led right into the pay-per-view, which opened with the Usos defending the Smackdown Tag Team titles against The Miz and Shane McMahon. The Miz, of course, being the hometown boy. Got a total superstar reaction here. You would have thought that this guy was the biggest babyface in the entire company. He probably got a bigger ovation than anybody else all night long. And the crowd loved this match. Miz hit the skull-crushing finale on Jimmy Uso. Shane, though, who had been in the ring, he was down. Referee was tending to him. By the time the ref came over to count, Jimmy was able to kick out. Now, I thought that was foreshadowing a Miz heel turn, but I was wrong. They did a fun spot here where Shane went for the coast-to-coast. He's balancing himself on the top rope. He looks across the ring into the other corner, where I think I think Jimmy Uso was down in the corner. Jey Uso all of a sudden crawls up the ropes onto the top rope in the opposite corner. So we have a standoff. We've got Shane in one corner on top. We've got Jey Uso in the other corner. Who's going to make the first move? They make their move together at the same time. They both threatened to jump. They finally did, and Shane clipped Jey in midair to save his partner from the Uso splash. It's actually a hell of a spot. Miz looked over at his father. Now he's looking to his father for wrestling advice. That was his mistake. His father told him to go up top, which Miz rarely does. But Miz went up top anyway, went for a frog splash. Uso got his knees up and rolled up Miz to retain the tag team titles. Miz was checking on Shane when the match was over. He's apologizing to him again. This is the second time now, going back to the Elimination Chamber last month, that Miz has taken the losing fall here against the Usos. So he's apologizing for getting pinned. Miz goes over and hugs his dad, very disappointed. And as he's walking away from his father, Shane snaps and attacks Miz from behind. He rips off Shane's Cleveland is Awesome t-shirt and wipes his sweat, and he's choking him with it and punching him and kicking him and stomping him. And he got great heel heat for this. Shane got up in George's face, George Mizanin in the front row, and he's all up in his face. He shoves Miz's father backwards into his seat, and he puts Miz in a triangle choke on the ground. Not a very good one, but a triangle nonetheless. And I'm looking, I kept waiting for the security guy to let Miz's father come around the barricade, which it looked like he was trying to do, and the security guy wouldn't let him do it. Hopefully they're just holding that off for a big spot at WrestleMania with George. Hopefully George is at WrestleMania, and he can give Shane a low blow, maybe, and help his son win the match. This was a great heel turn as far as just the way it was executed. They were smart enough to know, I guess, and if Shane was going to be the one to go heel, this was the place to do it. Miz's backyard. People just booed the shit out of him for it. And I wouldn't have done it this way. Miz was over big in Cleveland, but I still don't see him as a babyface. I've said this for how long now? I just don't buy it. And I didn't think they would do it, but they did. I thought it came off great. And since they went and turned Shane, may as well go all the way and bring back the Mean Street Posse. I don't know what Rodney is up to. I don't know what's the other guy's name. It was Rodney, Pete Gas, and there was a third guy. Jason, I think his name was. But Pete Gas, he does cameos all the time for them, doing stuff on the network. He's on the Edge and Christian show. We know he's still around. I think he actually came out with a book last year. So part of the posse is around. I have no idea what Rodney is up to, but I say get the posse back together. But I really hope they have one of their doctors give Shane a stress test or some kind of exam. He was sweating profusely out there. He looked like he was moments away from death. He looked awful at the end of this. And it's not the first time. I mean, you got to understand, Shane is probably closing in on 50. He's not as young as he used to be, even though he seems to think he is the way he flies around out there. He is older. He's not a full-time wrestler. But he just looks unhealthy by the end of these matches. So hopefully he's okay. We have Asuka defending the Smackdown Women's Championship against Mandy Rose. This was not very good. I said earlier, Mandy tried. I think Mandy and Sonya are a lot better now than they were when they first started out. You could see the improvement in both of them. Sonya, I'm more impressed by her, really, lately than I am even Mandy. But Mandy is definitely better and more competent than she used to be. I think she'll get to a point eventually where she's even very good. But she's not there yet. And maybe it was just her being in the ring with somebody like Asuka, who is one of the best in the company, and seeing them in there together side by side like that probably didn't do Mandy any favors. It just felt far beneath what Asuka is capable of. This was all just a setup for Sonya to find a kendo stick underneath the ring, which makes no sense because it wasn't a no disqualification match. So I'm not quite sure in the story here what she was planning on doing with that kendo stick. But when Mandy hit the ropes, she tripped over the ring skirt that Sonya had lifted up when she went to go retrieve the kendo stick from under the ring. And Asuka hit a roundhouse kick that looked great on the replay. They showed it in slow-mo. And you can see Mandy's jaw jiggle as Asuka's boot ricocheted off the side of her face. And with that, Asuka picked up the win. Sonya was very apologetic when the match was over. Mandy was just not in the mood to hear it. Again, not good, but Asuka retained, and thankfully we can move on from this. I know that there's been rumors of Lacey Evans getting the shot at Asuka at WrestleMania, getting a championship match, because Vince McMahon is apparently very high on her. Of course he's high on her. She's a tall, pretty blonde. Why wouldn't he be? That's his MO. So apparently Vince is very high on her. I hope that doesn't happen. She hasn't even had a match yet. And there's already rumors that she's going to get a championship match at WrestleMania. I pitched this earlier on the podcast. Have the winner of the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania, because you know they're going to have one. Have the winner of the Battle Royal, let's say on the Kickoff, become the number one contender and wrestle Asuka on the main card later on that night. And look, maybe Lacey wins the Battle Royal. I'm still not enamored with that idea, but at least then there would be a legitimate reason for her to get a championship match. But that's what I would do. We had a segment in the back with the New Day and Vince McMahon. They barged into Vince McMahon's office and they pleaded their case why Kofi deserves to be added to the title match. Now, this is the same Vince McMahon who's very particularly, personally, himself removed Kofi from the championship match and put Kevin Owens in his place. All of a sudden, Vince says, you know what? You're right. We'll make it a triple threat. It's coming up next. Big E, Xavier, you guys are barred from ringside, and Kofi, get on out there. Of course, this all turned out to be a swerve. Kofi goes out there, but he's not out there for a championship match. He's out there for a handicap match against The Bar. And I saw on my timeline a lot of hate for this. Some divided opinion, but more hate than anything else. I get what they were trying to do with this. They're trying to stack the deck. They're trying to build sympathy for Kofi Kingston as the underdog. He's the underdog in this story. He's clearly getting a championship match at WrestleMania. I mean, to me, that's been apparent for the last 2 weeks. You know, whatever their plan was has been abandoned. They bumped it up. Kevin Owens got the shot on this show, and it's going to be Kofi. Either getting a singles match or he's going to be part of a multi-man match at WrestleMania. And after tonight, I'd be in favor of a multi-man match. I'll get to that later. But he's going to get the shot at WrestleMania. And so what do you do in the meantime? In their mind, this was their way. I don't know that it was overly effective, but I get why they did it, because they wanted to stack the deck against him and get people behind him even more. Unfortunately, they had the entire crowd, not 5 minutes in, chanting, "This is boring," and they weren't wrong. New Day ran out eventually. They ran out to try to help. They were attacked. They were jumped from behind by Rusev and Nakamura, left laying. And the Bar pinned Kofi with the double white noise. This did not come off well, but it served a purpose. They're using Vince McMahon to position Kofi as the ultimate underdog going into WrestleMania. This is building to something. I think the hate that I saw, and there was a lot of it, I think the hate was overdone. This was not meant to be a fun segment. This was not meant to be a good match. This was not meant to be enjoyable. Sure as hell wasn't enjoyable. But that's not what this was designed to be. It served a different purpose. We had Aleister Black and Ricochet, Chad Gable and Bobby Roode, and the Revival. Triple threat for the Raw Tag Team titles. The Tag Team Champions finally got an entrance for the first time since they won the belts. Good for them. This was excellent. All action. Black and Ricochet, I think, have been the best pair of NXT call-ups in a very long time. They didn't win this match, but they also weren't the ones to eat the pin, which I figured they wouldn't be, because they're still protecting them. And they come across as stars when they're out there. They really push these guys hard. They have yet to be, I mean, I guess technically tonight they were beaten, but they have not been straight up pinned or made to submit. There was a Chaos Theory rolling German by Gable to Aleister Black at one point. And as soon as he hit it, Dash Wilder came off the top rope with a splash onto Gable. I will never get tired of seeing Chad Gable hit that Chaos Theory. He really is. He is such an underrated talent. The tag team thing right now is fine. But before long, if he's not on to bigger and better things, then these people are out of their minds. And I don't want to hear, oh, he's too small. He's too small. There's a lot of small guys on that roster who are pretty high up on the card. He better be one of them. Sadly, Ricochet is going to be having neck surgery soon enough if he has more matches like this. He hit a Hurricane Rana on Scott Dawson from the top rope to wipe out everybody on the floor. It's a very awkward landing for everybody, for Dawson and for Ricochet. Ricochet looked like he hit his head on the apron on the way down. That's number one. Number two, later on, after the match was over, he hit the 630, and he looked like he landed right on the back of his neck. He didn't sell it. He looked fine. Hopefully he is. but not good. He also hit a running dive out of the ring over the ring post onto Bobby Roode. At least there he didn't land on his neck. But yeah, that was pretty scary. But anyway, in the end, the Revival retained with the Shatter Machine on Chad Gable. And then all of the sore loser babyfaces attacked them after the match and laid them out. There was no reason for this. The Revival didn't do anything wrong. They didn't hook the tights. They didn't cheat. They won the match fair and square. These guys are sore losers, beating them up like that. We had Samoa Joe, R-Truth, Rey Mysterio, and Andrade Cien Almas fatal 4-way for the United States Championship. Far too much action here to recap, but this was an excellent match. If this wasn't the best match on the show, it was number 2. It was way up there. Truth busted out some of the trademark John Cena spots, the Cena shoulder blocks, the You Can't See Me, the 5-knuckle shuffle to Samoa Joe. John Cena is his hero. Maybe John Cena can grant him a Make-A-Wish one day. Mysterio hit a 619 on Joe. Drop of the dime missed, and Joe put him in the clutch. Rey passed out, and Joe retains the United States Championship. Excellent match. You know, next month marks 30 years since Rey Mysterio made his professional wrestling debut. April of 1989 is the first time that Rey Mysterio set foot inside a ring. He was 14 years old. And I look at him now, and in my opinion, he's in the midst of one of the best years of his career. Physically, his body has held up. I don't know what he's doing differently. He looks maybe a little bit smaller, so maybe he's not doing whatever he was doing before to really bulk up. Maybe that helps. I remember hearing him talk about having stem cell injection, whatever it is, whatever magic potion that he has been using. Because there was a period of time where it seemed like he couldn't go 2 weeks without suffering some kind of a knee injury. And it's not surprising, given the style that he's wrestled for so long, that he would have knee problems. But I've not heard of there being any issues from his run in Lucha Underground to being on the independents to being back here in WWE. He's been able to stay healthy. He's moving around like he's 20 years younger than he is. It's incredible. It's incredible to watch. 30 years, and he looks like he could go another 10 or 15 if he wants to. And I talked on the podcast earlier today about Jushin Thunder Liger retiring next year. He's already announced that he's retiring at the Tokyo Dome next January. And I talked about how we really were cheated out of a match between him and Rey Mysterio last year. They were going to have the big rematch. They've only had one match in their entire career against each other. And it was at a WCW Starrcade show back in 1996. And New Japan was going to put together the rematch last year in Long Beach, and then Rey got hurt. He hurt his arm, and he had to back out. And now that we know Liger is on basically his retirement tour, I really hope they can find a way to make that match happen in WWE before Liger hangs it up. Because Liger has a very unique deal where, you know, yeah, he's with New Japan, but he freelances and he makes his own deals. And WWE brought him in once for an NXT TakeOver show for a one-shot, and he won. He came in for one match. He didn't put anybody over. He came in, he beat Tyler Breeze, and they never used him again. So never say never. Stranger things have happened. There's been a lot of weird shit that's gone on in the wrestling world, and partnerships, and, you know, them sending guys to Evolve, and all these weird things. I hope they can find a way to make it happen at some point between now and next year before Liger hangs it up. I think we need to see that match. I also think, and I hope, that we get John Cena and Samoa Joe for the U.S. title of WrestleMania. Another match like Liger and Mysterio that was supposed to happen way back in the last couple of years anyway, but because of an injury to Joe, the match never happened. Sasha Banks and Bayley against Nia Jax and Tamina for the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Beth Phoenix joined the announce team before the match, and it would become apparent by the end of this why she did. There was a botched double team move by Jax and Tamina, surprise, surprise, where Tamina backdropped Sasha onto Nia. She was supposed to backdrop her onto Nia. Nia was going to catch her and give her a Samoan drop. And it didn't look to me like Sasha did anything wrong. I mean, her body was flying through the air. I don't know how you can blame her for this. So I don't know if it was more Tamina. I don't know if it was more Nia. But somebody fucked up somewhere in here. And Nia kind of tried to save it, but it didn't look good. Sasha went for a dive later on through the ropes, out onto Jax and Tamina. They caught her. Bayley hit a dive out onto all of them, knocked everybody over. Back in the ring, Nia went for a powerbomb to Bayley. Bayley reversed it into a Hurricane Rana for the win. Not a very good match. Jax and Tamina, though, immediately beat them down when the match was over. Nia threw Sasha, just hurled her through the air over the announce desk. And Beth Phoenix stepped out of the way when all of this chaos was going on. And so she's standing there, and Tamina starts to stare her down. And they start jaw-jacking, they exchange words. I don't know what was said, but Beth punched Tamina, which led to Nia then attacking Beth Phoenix, threw her into the ring. Nia gave her a leg drop. Natty ran out to try to make the save. She got kicked in the face. And because, Natty, of course, has a history with Beth. They used to be tag team partners, but she got laid out as well. And from, judging from the looks of this, sure looks like we're in for either a 3-way or maybe even a 4-way if they find another team at WrestleMania for the women's tag team titles. And we may see the Divas of Doom reunion at WrestleMania between Beth Phoenix and Natty. Kevin Owens and Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. Greg Hamilton announced this as a triple threat match, which was very confusing given that we had already seen Kofi earlier in the show. And then instead of Kofi, he introduced the third man as Mustafa Ali, who was booed. Not loudly booed, not booed out of the building, but definitely got booed. And that made me very sad. Because before he got hurt, this whole underdog story, this whole underdog role, it belonged to Mustafa Ali. He earned one of the spots in the Elimination Chamber challenging for the WWE title. But then he got hurt, and Kofi took his spot, and all of a sudden Kofi Mania took off. And here he is now, all healed up and back, getting the championship match he was deprived of last month. And through no fault of his own, other than he's not Kofi Kingston, he gets booed. So that sucked. I am a big Mustafa Ali fan. I've made that very clear before. I'm a big advocate for this guy ever since he was on 205 Live. I feel and still feel he should be involved, if he's not the champion, but he should be involved in the top mix. He is among the best of the talents they have on that Smackdown roster. And so to see him here on pay-per-view wrestling for the WWE title, I was happy. Even though they put him in what was really a no-win situation. It was not entirely fair to him, but still. They put him in a major spot. I thought he delivered. I thought he was even the star. Him or Bryan, they were both excellent in this match. Owens, to me, just kind of felt like he was there. But Ali and Bryan, to an extent, were the real stars of this match. Adding Ali made it a better match for sure. He was up on the ropes at one point, on the outside, climbing the ropes. Bryan hit a dropkick from the inside, and Ali went flying through the air, collided shoulder first with the barricade, took this great bump. It looked brutal, it looked stupid, but it looked great. I've seen him take that spot before on 205 Live. He's a crazy man for doing it, but again, it looks great. Later on, he hit a 450 splash on Bryan on the apron. Owens hit an apron powerbomb to Ali on the floor, rolled him inside. Rowan, though, before Owens can get in and make the pin, Rowan grabbed Owens, threw him over into the timekeeper's area. Inside, Ali from the second rope. He's on the middle rope on the inside. He goes for what would have been his second tornado DDT on Daniel Bryan in this match. Only this time, Bryan caught him in midair with the Busaiku knee and picked up the win. It looked fantastic, especially on the replay. And so what started out as not a great situation here, because all the people wanted was Kofi Kingston. In one respect, it's great, because you could tell whatever they're doing with Kofi, it's working. The whole stuff with Vince McMahon screwing him over, and you're not worthy of being a champion, and now the people are really behind Kofi. But these poor bastards are out there trying to have a championship match, and the people don't really care about it. They're chanting, "We want Kofi." Kofi Kingston, and they're not really paying attention. Midway through, all of a sudden they started to win people over, and by the end, it felt like people were pretty much into this. So it turned into a very good match, much better than it probably would have been without Ali in there. After this, I said earlier, as far as a multi-man match at WrestleMania, and I'm not big on multi-man matches as far as WrestleMania main events, but it's obvious the WWE Championship, it ain't headlining WrestleMania. It ain't When was the last time the WWE title headlined a WrestleMania? Was it 32? I guess it would have been 32. I keep thinking that the Universal title has been around longer than it has. Certainly in terms of actual pay-per-views, I think the Elimination Chamber last month was the first time in a year and a half, or 2 years maybe, that championship headlined a show, something crazy like that. It ain't headlining WrestleMania. I would be in favor of having a multi-person match. I'd like to see a Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania. You keep Kevin Owens in there because what else is he going to do? You keep Mustafa Ali in there because I think he deserves to stay in that picture. But you add Kofi Kingston. I'm sure Vince is going to have to, make him work for it, and eventually Kofi will make it, just like Becky made it tonight. And you end up with a Fatal 4-Way. I think that would be a killer match. You get those 4 guys in the ring together at WrestleMania. But if Kofi Kingston does not win the championship at WrestleMania, they're making a very big mistake. It's pretty, especially after tonight, pretty obvious to me. They've got something special here. I don't know that Kofi's going to go on some kind of long run, but to give him the fairy tale ending and give him the big payoff at WrestleMania, that's what WrestleMania should be for. That's really, this kind of story should be building to a big climax and a big payoff at WrestleMania. And they've been jerking our chains now for weeks with all these swerves and Vince McMahon coming out and Becky's unsuspended. Oh, wait, no, she's not. And Kofi's in the championship match. Oh, wait, Vince says he isn't. They've been jerking our chains so much. They got to give us something in return at WrestleMania. And I think that's a Kofi Kingston win. Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. Stipulation that if Becky wins, she is added to the Women's Championship match at WrestleMania. Becky sold her leg the entire match. This really wasn't even a match. It was more of an angle to set up the eventual Ronda Rousey run-in. I am so beyond done with the injured leg bullshit. People were already behind Becky Lynch because she had a badass vibe to her. She'd walk out there, she had this swagger, she's got the t-shirt, the man. You're either a Becky fan or you're not, but she had this sort of, this chip on her shoulder, badass vibe when she would walk out. She already had that. And yet every single week, she hobbles out there like a one-legged man. 2 months of this already. It's overkill. It sucks. I was waiting for her to throw the crutch away and swerve Charlotte by showing her that her leg is all healed up. Like Bret Hart did during his storyline with Vince McMahon going into WrestleMania 26. Remember, he was hurt, broken ankle, whatever it was. Turned out to be a swerve. Once Vince signed the contract, Bret took the cast off, and Vince knew he was fucked. And I thought they were going to do something similar here. And you'd see Charlotte's eyes kind of bug out of her skull, and Becky would start kicking her ass. It never happened. Charlotte got Becky in the figure 4. Ronda Rousey ran down. She intentionally hit Becky for the disqualification, meaning that Becky Lynch has backdoored her way into the Raw Women's Championship match of WrestleMania, making it a triple threat match. Here is Becky Lynch, the woman who won the Women's Royal Rumble match to earn the right to go to WrestleMania to challenge for the title of her choosing, and she backdoors her way into the championship match at WrestleMania. I detest what they have done to get us to this point. They have taken a simple story and they have turned it into a watered-down, convoluted mess. Becky wins the Royal Rumble. Then they suspend Becky. Becky apologizes. So they unsuspend Becky. Then 5 minutes later, they suspend Becky again. And they put Charlotte in the WrestleMania match. Then Ronda Rousey says, please reinstate Becky. I want to fight her. Stephanie says no. So what does Ronda do? She surrenders the title. She drops it and walks away. A week later, what does WWE do? Why, they reinstate Becky. And they make it a championship match at Fast Lane between her and Charlotte. Even though, and here's the other aspect of it I didn't even think of until just now. So they make this championship match, right? It's going to be Becky against Ronda, or Becky against Charlotte for the vacant title at Fast Lane. The entire premise of this storyline, it all started with Stephanie and Triple H refusing to clear Becky because her leg was injured. And they said, Becky, we cannot let you wrestle unless you let our doctors look at you and you get clearance and they say that your knee is okay. And yet every single week this woman comes out and she's on a crutch. But now apparently it's okay. We're going to put a one-legged woman in the championship match at Fastlane. A week later, what happens? Ronda Rousey shows up and says, psych, I want my belt back. So they give it back to her. And now the Fastlane match goes from being a championship match to a non-title match. And then here Ronda Rousey runs out and attacks Becky for the DQ, putting her back in the match at WrestleMania. A match that Becky Lynch had to begin with because she won the fucking Royal Rumble, which apparently didn't mean anything because it took her having to win by disqualification tonight to get her title match at WrestleMania. I have a headache just thinking about all of that. I don't know how the average fan processes all this. I think they just look at it and they say they either like Becky or they like Ronda, and they just ignore all of this bullshit. I don't even think they pay attention to half this stuff. I don't know why I pay attention to half this stuff. The fact I even remember all that is unbelievable. What a mess. A mess of their own doing. It is a miracle that Becky Lynch is still as over as she is. I'm shocked. I am shocked that she still gets the reactions that she gets when she comes out after all of this nonsense. Now, throughout this pay-per-view, we had a bunch of Elias segments. He'd be in the ring, he was singing, he was bashing Cleveland, and then they would cut away. I figured it was building to some kind of payoff, some kind of a big appearance. The big appearance was a Lacey Evans cameo, doing her usual shtick where she walks down the aisle and she turns and she goes right backstage. Only this time, as Elias was distracted, Randy Orton came out of nowhere and hit the RKO. People love this. People love the RKO out of nowhere. All of a sudden, AJ Styles is on the apron. Randy doesn't see him, and AJ hits a phenomenal forearm out of nowhere. So they're playing the whole cat and mouse thing. Obviously, it's going to be Styles and Orton at WrestleMania, and I'm okay with that. I said this on the podcast earlier today. If they add Orton against Styles, and they have Joe against Cena for the U.S. title, as far as the Smackdown side goes, those are two solid additions, I think, to the WrestleMania card. So that sounds cool to me. And then we had the main event. The Shield reunited one last time. They made that very clear. For the final time. Roman Reigns, in his first match back since October, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose against Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, and Sacha Baron Corbin. They billed this as the final time that we will ever see the Shield together because they said Dean Ambrose has chosen to not re-sign with WWE, and he will be leaving the company, quote, in the near future. For a guy who's leaving, they sure did harp about this being the last time you're ever going to see the three of these guys together. They were harping on this a little too much. So I don't know what's going on with Ambrose. It may well be a case where Roman got in his ear and convinced him to stay and he's going to sign a new contract after all. I don't, for what it's worth, I don't believe this was all just the work from the beginning. I think he really was, and maybe still is, going to leave. But it was always possible that they would be able to talk him out of doing that, and maybe that's what's happened. I find it hard to believe that he's still leaving, but they would be openly telling you now that he's going to be leaving. And they would have Renee Young on TV last Monday saying, oh, he's leaving for greener pastures. He's leaving for greener pastures. There's absolutely no way, there is a 0% chance that they know that Dean Ambrose is leaving, and they would allow Renee Young to make a comment that implies that he's going to go somewhere else and make more money than he would be making in WWE. There is no chance of that at all, which means he's either staying or Renee made that comment on her own. But there's no other explanation for it. There's absolutely no way they would allow a comment like that to be made, or they would script a comment like that unless they knew this guy was staying put. So this turned into, I mean, when I call it the typical Shield six-man tag match, I don't mean that as an insult. I was always a very big fan of these Shield six-mans. They have their formula. It is formulaic, but I think for them the formula works, and it's been a while since we've seen the three of them together. Look, they claim it's going to be the last time in a long time. Maybe it is. Maybe it is the last time we're going to see these three together like this. I thought that overall it was a very good match. The crowd was into it. There were some fun spots. It was, all action pretty much. I was never bored during the match. Corbin hit a choke slam on Roman, and Roman, for his part, looked fine. Didn't look rusty. Didn't look winded. Physically, physique-wise, I mean, he's got the vest, but pretty much looks the same, so he looked good. Corbin hit a choke slam for a near fall. At one point, Rollins and Ambrose and Lashley and McIntyre, they disappeared into the crowd. They brawled over by where the kickoff panel is sitting on the pre-show. They were brawling there. Rollins did a dive from, not the balcony, but basically a dive out of the crowd at one point, wiped out everybody. All things that we've seen in these Shield matches before. So once Lashley was taken out, because McIntyre got the stomp. He got his head stomped in by Rollins on one of the announce tables. They took out McIntyre as well. So McIntyre and Lashley. I meant Lashley got stomped. Those guys are down. Baron Corbin's all by himself. He's all by himself in the ring, and now the Shield has him surrounded. Poor guy. And Rollins got a little excited at one point. He was, I believe his exact quote, if I remember, was, let's fucking do this, or it was he dropped an F-bomb, he got bleeped. It's not a big deal. But he was really into this. Boy, was he into this. They did the shaky cam stuff. At one point, Shield was, beating up one of the heels outside the ring. And they did that thing where they intentionally shake the camera up and down, left and right. And this shaky cam needs to die in a fire. I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. So the Shield now is in the ring with Corbin. They hit the triple power bomb. They get the pin. No swerve, no heel turn, no shenanigans, no Braun Strowman either on this show. Just a straight up Shield win. And they all posed and did the fist bump to end the show. They really wanted you to believe that this was the final time that you would see these three together as the Shield. I still think, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong on Raw tomorrow night, if they do some kind of a swerve then, because I still feel we're getting Rollins and, or rather Reigns and Ambrose at WrestleMania. But it sure didn't look that way tonight. They seemed to all be on the same page. They were all hugging. They were all buddy-buddy. I guess we'll see on TV tomorrow night if there's some kind of a big swerve, and that'll put WrestleMania in perspective, because I sure as hell don't need to see Roman Reigns at WrestleMania against Baron Corbin or against Bobby Lashley. And short of adding him to the Universal title match, which I think they should not do, I don't see any other obvious opponent for Roman Reigns, unless Ambrose does turn. So, real good main event. Overall, really good show. I'm going to check the polls so far. There is a poll up if you want to vote. It will be up the next couple of days on Twitter. @Solomonster is my handle. As I look at it now, we've already got over 2,000 votes in the Twitter poll. 64% thumbs up, 36% thumbs down. So not overwhelming, but pretty positive score overall. Most people seem to enjoy the show. Again, I'm in the same camp. I wouldn't call it the best show of the year, or even necessarily better than the Elimination Chamber, but there was more to like on this show than not. There was some head-scratching stuff on this show, and the biggest thing that really burns my ass is the stuff that they have done to get to where they are now with Charlotte and Becky and Ronda and all of that stuff. Because again, they took something that Ronda is doing her damnedest on social media, for all the stuff with her calling it fake aside. She's doing her damnedest to make this feel real. She's doing her damnedest to make this feel authentic, like she really does resent the fans and she really does hate Becky, that it's real and it's not scripted and it's not manufactured. I don't think any of that comes across on television because they've chosen to go the hokey sports entertainment route with all of these nonsensical swerves and suspensions and the stupid knee injury, which needs to just be over at this point. They need to forget all of the nonsense that has happened up until this point. The McMahons need to stay as far the fuck away from this now until WrestleMania as humanly possible. I don't want to see Vince involved. I don't want to see Triple H involved. I don't want to see Stephanie involved. I don't want to see a McMahon in every corner. Keep them out of this. Let their promos carry them into WrestleMania. That is going to sell the match. That is going to sell the show. The last week, 2 weeks before WrestleMania. You don't want to put some promo packages together, that's fine. But it's going to be their mouths. It's going to be their promos that carry them into the show and sell people on this match. They don't need to overcomplicate it. They don't need to come up with some other weird storyline twist. They've done enough. The promos are what is going to sell this match. That is all they need to do between now and WrestleMania. Do not fuck this up any more than you already have. And that's your Fast Lane review. So if you have any feedback, leave those comments down below in the comments section. I want to hear from you what you thought of the show. Give the video a thumbs up if you like what you hear. I would appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter and vote in the poll at Solomonster. And check out the latest episode of The Sound Off, episode 589. It was a 3-hour show. You can listen to it over the course of the week. A little bit of Fast Lane talk, but mostly just a lot of news to cover this week. A lot of deaths, unfortunately. Talk about King Kong Bundy. Talk about Jushin Liger retiring. Talk about the Ronda Rousey social media uproar from this week. And a lot of other stuff, including NXT. The injury to Tommaso Ciampa. I put forth my own tournament bracket, what I would do to crown a new NXT champion at the TakeOver show in New York. And of course the WrestleMania countdown, all that good stuff. So you can download the full episodes of the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, pretty much all major podcasting platforms. And I appreciate your support as always. Until next time, be well, stay safe, keep it locked in here, sub to the YouTube channel, please, if you have not already done so. And I will see you for episode 590 of The Sound Off this weekend. Until then, adios.